Okay, we're back. We just got through watching a movie, and then we're doing our evening stream. So, welcome.
I can be here for a little bit. I've got to run in a little bit to go hang out with my girlfriend. But
Oh, okay. Well, welcome.
so far,
Certainly appreciate the participation.
I enjoyed participating. The movie was really good.
Oh, you liked it?
Oh,
I
yeah.
was telling Chris I didn't care for it as much this time
Really?
around. It seemed like a lot of. First of all, I thought the acting from Woody Harrelson and Robert Downey Jr. was really bad. It's some of their worst acting, and the writing was kind of cheesy.
As someone who's been in drug communities, I've seen a lot of people act
Yeah.
just like that. So,
My real life drug people were way more.
I think
original than-
Woody Harrelson's was probably the worst as far as like performance.
cartoonishness, yeah.
Yeah,
It was a lot of pointless scenes all strung together that really did nothing to advance the plot at all. Like it was really slow. There was a lot of filler in it.
It's more about building the world, though.
yeah. I think
I mean, it was It was based on the Philip K. Dick novel, which was semi-autobiographical. It was like a fictionalized version of an actual experience he had.
I can see that. It definitely.
So I don't know how much is the novel and how much is Richard Linklater, like where the disconnect is. But it just, I don't know. It was okay. I mean, I'm glad we watched it. But it had more of an impact when I watched it originally than it did tonight.
I thought it was good. I definitely want to watch it again, but not sober, just to see.
Oh, well, that's the other thing. I was not sober when I watched it the first time.
Oh, okay.
This might be my first time watching this. Maybe it's a drug movie.
It might be.
I think I've seen it sober every time I've seen it, but yeah, I mean, but I've been in enough of those communities where I can relate to it. Especially that scene, like whenever the car breaks down and like they're out on the side of the road, and he starts saying to the drugs, he's like, "Don't blame the drugs, man." Like I've heard people say that before.
Oh my God.
I have been there before. I've seen people say that shit exactly. Like, don't blame the drugs, man. This isn't about the drugs, and like, you know, it's really about the drugs.
It's very much about the drugs. Oh my God.
And I never heard anybody do anything like as crazy as like him spraying the whatever into the balloon thing. But I've seen people like convinced that they could get drugs by doing something stupid like that.
Oh yeah.
There was this guy I knew that was convinced that you could grow meth, like you know how you can get get an aquarium tank and you grow those little sugar crystal candies in the water.
Yeah.
There's a guy that was convinced that you could grow meth like that.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And he was like, that's how you make it, man. You get the aquarium and you have to put the right ingredients together, but then you put them in there and the crystals just grow on the strings, man. I'm like, that's just sugar candy, dude. That's not
meth.
It's not that.
The things we do to get high.
Yeah, no, I've never really, I guess, like hung around people who. Well, no, that's a lie. I definitely have hung around people who did like harder stuff than like weed, but that's most of my experience has been around people who are just guys, stoners, and even stoners have. I feel like a lot of that similar kind of vibe, especially the paranoia, which is always weird to me because like it never. Marijuana never make like I don't ever experience the paranoia.
It was worse when it was illegal because you had to be paranoid about the criminality.
Well, I mean, even when I was
got removed, the paranoia became way less.
Even when I lived in Memphis, where it was illegal, it just never. I guess I just didn't do it.
It never made me paranoid. I never got paranoid on it.
I get depending on the strain, I get anxiety. Like I get that.
Anxiety. Yeah, but like
I never really got paranoid. Mushrooms were really the only thing that ever made me paranoid.
Never tried mushrooms.
Coke used to make me a little paranoid. I didn't do Coke very often. I only did it a few times.
Yeah.
And it made me feel jittery and just like it made me paranoid because I felt so nervous that it engendered a paranoia, but it wasn't like just straight paranoia. It was just like I just hated the way it made me feel. I'm not a fan of cocaine at all. So
No, I don't like it either.
I was basically any drug other than weed. I just have no desire to try.
Yeah, that's
it's wise.
That's a big thing.
I
And
don't know that you're missing anything.
and honestly, like it's a kind of a big thing. Like I don't know. I guess like people around my age, like either they have tried it when they were like in like college and then just never touched it again, or they have no desire to try it. As at least for my, but like stoners, like every other Gen Zer I've ever met is a stoner. So you know,
Like I said before, I wish I could be a stoner. I just it makes me sick. So I don't
yeah.
know.
No.
I was a stoner.
You know, I mean, I honestly like if like I would recommend people probably try. If there's any drugs that I think people should try at one time in their life, don't do drugs, kids. But
Yes, don't. You in YouTube. This is not
it's not medical advice. No.
right. Yeah,
I'm saying in certain drugs, I feel like I had a positive experience from some shrooms and some acid, but only if you knew absolutely where they came from. You'd have to really know the people. I wouldn't just buy it from someone in the street, and I wouldn't just do it from anybody. So,
Yeah, like there's only like one person I know of who I would trust buying shrooms from. He's actually, funnily enough, he's a bartender at a gay bar.
well, you could always just go out to a cow pasture at the right time of night.
that's where we got ours. We have to trust the right cows.
And like those, at least you know where they're coming from. You know, just make sure you wash them off real good first. Yeah,
They still have stuff in them. Like we would have little worms in our tea, and probably some shit.
Well, you can dry them out. You know, you can wash them off and dry them out. You don't just eat them like when they're fresh normally.
Well, you can do both. We would make Kool-Aid with them.
Right.
But even when you make Kool-Aid, like you don't always see all the little bugs and worms. They come out as you cook them.
But the stuff that like we used to get was not grown in shit. It was grown organically, like hydroponically, kind of like they do with some weed.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
it was very, very clean. And I never had any worms or anything.
No, ours came right out the patties.
I don't think there's anybody. I don't think there's anybody I would do it from. I would get it from or do it today. Today I wouldn't even fuck with it. But like that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, it's like more of just like the who you know kind of thing. Like if you just don't know anybody really who's really big into it anymore, you just at this point it's one of those things that because of its illegality, you really only can take people you trust. Whereas like weed, you fucking go to, I guess if it's legal in your state, it. Not that I necessarily trust the companies that are now growing weed and selling it, but
well, it is regulated now. So
yeah, it is regulated.
There's some accountability.
Yeah, not enough.
That's the main reason I do support legalization of drugs. Is I think that if they legalize it and then regulate them all, they were all sold in dispensaries and everything like that. First of all, it would it would kill a lot of the more like the junkie types that are just trying to just getting trying to scrape by a little bit of crack or heroin or like that, because it would make it way more expensive.
Yeah,
it would make it way more, but the purity would always be up to snuff, and it wouldn't have nearly the side effects.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have people just dying all of the time.
Yeah,
due to just not even overdoses, but just getting bad drugs.
Yeah,
which it's one of those things that I understand that there's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I just don't feel bad for druggies, but look, there are very few constants in humans, and one of those constants is people like getting high. So, at the very least, we can make it to where it's not going to kill people.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think people should have to risk death to do. If there's a way to make people drugs safe,
and if we regulate it, we can also
test your ecstasy at the clubs, even though it's illegal. They had all these testing.
Yeah.
Well, you know, every single major, you know, recreational drug, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and so and at one point, actually, I don't know if ecstasy still is, but like ecstasy, like in like at least in some form, have all been, and I think, and like I know with methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine, they are still produced by pharmaceutical companies for very specific medical cases that they use in hospitals. There is pharmaceutical grade cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember the name of it. There's the methamphetamine even has a brand name. It's like digoxin or something like that. And like, I mean, I haven't heard of anybody prescribing it before, but it's produced.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, it's not even a schedule. It's not even Schedule 1. It's Schedule 2. Most of them are Schedule 2 because they're considered to have medical uses.
Yeah, they're starting to use some of those in mental health therapy too.
Yeah.
They use MDMA supposedly for PTSD, ketamine for depression, and there's psychedelic therapy now.
Yeah. And so like just that alone, like just tells you like if they made those drugs and they made them more available, but they were of that pharmaceutical grade. And like I've never heard, and I did some research into this a while back just out of curiosity. I was like, do people that get on like that they're prescribed the pharmaceutical methamphetamine, do they have the same kind of addiction? And apparently they don't have the same addiction profiles. They don't have the same problems with it. It's very regulated, and it's basically just Adderall. They basically take it like Adderall. And so like these drugs can be done in a way where it's not like, you know, it's not going to be harmful in the way that they are. It's just that they're used in the harmful ways. So
yeah. And the more we would be able to, I guess, regulate their usage, the better it would be, just kind of broadly, I think.
yeah, it's disoxin. Disoxin is the brand name for methamphetamine in the United States. You could like that. I mean, I guess I've never heard of anybody who prescribed it, and they prescribe it for ADHD, supposedly. So, and heroin they use.
I mean, isn't Adderall just basically microdosing like meth, basically?
It's
like, I know that's a little bit flippant, but
yeah, it's amphetamine and dextroamphetamine, which are not like it's half amphetamine, it's half like amphetamine without the meth precursor on it, and the other half it's dextroamphetamine. I don't know what the difference is, but either one of them are quite as addictive or quite as strong, and it's a combination. Adderall is a combination of those two drugs, and that tend to like one balances the other out, I guess somehow, but yeah, they're not. It's not. But they are amphetamines. It's an amphetamine. Period. There's no doubt about that. But it's not the same thing. Methamphetamine is. What is it like? I looked into the chemistry of all this. I went down a chemistry rabbit hole at one point, trying to figure out like what this stuff was. Back all those years ago, I had tried it and stuff like that. And I wanted to know what was going on in my body. I remember like it's like the difference between like the only difference between like real pseudoephedrine, methamphetamine is just the alpha hydroxy group. That's the reason why you can make methamphetamine from Sudafed, because if you take it and you get enough of it together and you crush it up and you pour it through all this stuff, and then you do this process to remove the alpha hydroxy group from it.
And like, this is not an advice channel, by the way.
Yeah.
YouTube.
No, I'm just talking about the chemistry. I'm not talking.
I'm just protecting myself. I'm just putting a disclaimer. Yeah. I don't want people to learn how to make
this won't tell you how, because I don't understand how to make it. Period. Even after reading all that stuff, I don't understand the first thing about how you would actually make it. But like that's what they do is like it's a chemical process for removing one single, you know, like the chemical structure. You're removing just this one little like block of it from it, and that's what the chemical structure of methamphetamine is. So I mean, I don't know much. Good night, sweetie. I love you.
Oh yeah. Hi, Lindsay. By the way, I see that you were here. And,
yeah. She might still be on her phone, but she's going to bed. So. She's not feeling very good either.
So you probably could get better advice on making drugs from fucking Breaking Bad than this channel.
Oh, definitely.
Hopefully you do.
I learned most of the stuff I learned from Totsi back in the day. You know, Temple of the Screaming Electron. I think it got taken down, but like that you said the website that used to have all the information about different kinds of drugs and stuff on.
I
like
used
that.
Arrowwood. That was my.
Arrowwood was good too. I also used Arrowwood, but most of the stuff. This is back whenever. I mean, that's how far back it goes. Tatsi was the thing that was Arrowwood came around after that. So.
Oh.
Temple of the Screaming Electron. They had like hacker stuff and shit on there too. They had all sorts of alternative information type shit.
I only remember the Anarchist Cookbook.
Yeah.
I remember that. We used to sell it at the bookstore I worked at. We had to keep it behind.
I used to have a copy of it.
It's not even useful. Like half the shit.
It's not.
It's not even.
It's not. No.
Oh,
I used to have a copy of it, but yeah, it's not really useful.
It's funny for the memes. That's about it.
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's kind of like that, and it kind of the Anarchist Cookbook kind of reminds me of the book. What is it? How to blow up a pipeline, which is less of a how-to manual and more of a why we should blow up pipelines.
Right.
False advertising.
We should.
Well, I understand. I'm saying that, and actually, even arguably, the book doesn't even argue that we should in the immediate sense. Just like it's more of a defense for non-violent climate resistance.
Well, that sounds pretty violent, blowing up a pipeline.
Well, violence as in violence to other people, whereas the advocacy is to destroy infrastructure, not...
Yeah, that's vandalism. I don't support that either. I don't support...
Sure, I understand you don't, but I'm saying, like, it makes a distinction between... In fact, climate protests, the violent ones, the ones that, like, destroy property, make a distinction to not harm people, but instead to just destroy property.
That doesn't make them any more heroic to me. They're still thugs and hoodlums.
Sure. I mean,
like, I'm trying to think of this.
I'm trying to I guess get across that they make that distinction. You might not, but you...
Well, that goes to what we were talking about earlier today about people that think they're doing the right thing. Like, they're convinced and rationalizing to themselves that they're doing something good for humanity.
Yeah, but you think that's good. You think that doesn't scare you.
No, I think my point from today kept getting lost, but it was that I think that's the exception. I think most people, I want people to think they're doing the right thing, and I want them to act from their
I also do.
And yeah. I think most people that do that are not something to be scared of. I think these are fringe extremists. And
well, you only think that
rationalize
for what it's worth.
I don't think violence, unless you're like defending yourself or protecting somebody, I don't think violence is ever the right thing. So if you're rationalizing violence somehow, you're probably not on the right track.
Do you think there's a distinction between violence against people and violence against property?
Not one that makes a difference for me in like evaluating it morally. I don't want either one.
Really?
Yeah, I don't want either one.
I mean, I think one's worse than the other, but I think they're both bad.
Well, one in the consequence of the effect, but in the act itself, I don't. If someone has a propensity to go out and harm people versus harm property, I think both of those are antisocial, and I don't want them in like participating in the same society as me. I can't create a society with people that rationalize or justifies. Property is almost worse because you can make a case for defending yourself against humans. Like self-defense. Well, yeah. To go out, what are you defending against by destroying someone's property? That's just pure aggression.
Well, I mean, what if, say, for instance, there was a bulldozer that was like bulldozing your house and you like firebombed the bulldozer? That would be violence.
It's not just randomly, arbitrarily bulldozing your house. It probably has legal authority to do so. And you're going outside of the process.
Sure, but like which would be worse? Firebombing a bulldozer or firebombing a group of people?
How about just not firebombing? Why do I?
No, I'm aware. I'm saying which one would you consider to be morally worse?
I consider them both bad.
Sure, they're both bad. Which one is worse?
I don't want I want penalties for both.
Sure.
Anybody that either one.
Absolutely. That's not the question, though. You're avoiding the question.
No, because you're trying to get me to say that bombing a bulldozer is more acceptable than people.
No. Not that it's acceptable. Just that bombing people is worse than bombing a bulldozer.
But what difference does it make if I don't want either one?
I mean, I don't want either one either. But I would agree.
I can lobby for both, penalties against both. Which there probably already are.
But that's not the question. The question is which one is worse. And you very clearly, because you understand how morals work, you would agree that killing people is worse than like destroying a piece of property, because people are people and property is not living, and there's a whole complex web of why people are more morally valuable than property. But you just don't like that.
What's the relevance of that, though? Like it doesn't matter to me.
Then why wouldn't you? Then why
like
wouldn't you say it? If it doesn't matter, then why don't you say it? Say it. Say firebombing people is worse than firebombing property. Not that either one is acceptable.
Worse in what context, though? They're both bad.
Legally or morally. Yeah.
Morally.
Well, maybe legally. Like the penalties for destroying property are probably less than for destroying a human life. So legally,
yes.
If that's your metric.
That's one of the metrics.
Although if you destroy property recklessly without thinking of the consequences of it, and you have the potential of possibly killing people because of your recklessness in destroying that property, I think you deserve more of a penalty than if they
had some little, and during COVID, they had some little anarchs up here in Seattle, some young girls that like did something with the train tracks. They vandalized or destroyed the train tracks, and they got arrested and charged with attempted murder.
Yeah. But like that's not because the property, that's because of the potential damage to people.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Because
you're asking me which violence is bad. Like
I'm saying bush violence is worse.
I think it's all bad.
That's not the question.
But I don't want to have to choose between like degrees.
No one's asking you to choose.
Yeah, you just asked me which one was worse.
Well, yeah,
you have to make a choice between.
Well, no. I'm not asking. I am asking you. I'm asking you what your position is, because you do have a position on this, and because we both agree that violence against people is.
But I don't have a position that ever my position's not relevant to anything.
What do you mean it's not relevant to it?
Unless I'm an actual situation, I can't imagine what a situation would be where I have to pick: do you want this property vandalized, or do you want this human?
That's not the question, though.
That's the only time it would even be relevant. Otherwise, it's just a thought experiment.
Well, no. Well, okay. First off, sure. Half the things we talk about are thought experiments, so I don't understand what your problem is with this thought experiment.
I don't understand the point or the purpose of ranking levels of violence just as an experiment.
We do.
Just for fun.
I mean, it's not for fun. We do. You do. I do. We all do.
If I see someone destroying a building, like the anarchs smashing out the glass on May Day, I don't think, at least it's not a person, and it's less where I think, look at those thugs destroying something.
Well, yeah, of course.
And if I see someone like attack another human, I don't think, that's much worse than attacking property. So it doesn't have any like practical application that I could ground it in. That I can ground your question in.
No, I think there is, because I think that we should have higher penalties for people who harm people.
Yeah, but I'm not a judge. Like if I worked in that profession, then the question might have more relevance.
It's not.
Here's an interesting one. What about these just stop oil protesters that like you will lay down in front of a car or in front of a highway to stop the traffic, and in one of those cases, like because they wouldn't move, and no one obviously wanted to run over the people. It was someone in the car was trying to get to a hospital, and that person died. This really happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that they tried to charge them with negligent homicide. And I think it failed because it was in a country where they were kind of like on that leftist kind of side of things. And like, I think that person should have been, those people should have been charged with negligent homicide myself.
I agree.
I do too.
I agree. I think I do think that there are definitely ways in which like for instance protests can harm people directly, and those ways that harm people are bad and shouldn't be done, even if like they think that they're just harming property. Sometimes in the pursuit of harming property, you harm people, and harming people is worse than harming property. See, they wouldn't have gotten charged with negligent homicide if a person wouldn't have been harmed. So they would have been charged with something lesser, because harming property is not as bad as harming people. They're both bad.
And in another one of those cases, someone was trying to get to a job because they were on parole, and like part of their parole was they had to work a job, and they couldn't get past them, and that person went back to jail because of the fact that they couldn't get to their job, like the job, and
they couldn't make an exception because of the protest.
That's apparently not. I mean, I never heard anything more about that story afterwards. So maybe they appealed and got it straightened out. I hope so.
I hope so too.
But that's horrifying, you know. And like, plus, those Justice for All people are just stupid anyway. I don't think they're doing anything good for stopping oil or anything. I think they're just being morons.
Yeah,
but that happens with construction and traffic accidents too. That can block. Like if someone had a traffic accident and it caused somebody going to the hospital to die, they wouldn't get charged.
Well, yes, but the difference would be that somebody who's in a traffic accident is in less control of the situation than, for instance, like
a bunch of people just laying in the road trying to block the traffic.
Yeah. I think the big important, like the thing that protesters broadly have to keep in mind, climate protesters specifically, because we're talking about that, but protesters broadly have to keep in mind the human impact of their protest.
But they don't seem like they care much about other humans, like that are not part of their in-group.
Well, that's just your opinion, Jeff.
Yeah, that's my impression.
Well, some of them don't. Some of them have made that statement blatantly.
Like they tear up art museums, and like
some of them have
made. They don't seem very pro-social.
The loss of human life to be considerable because they believe their protest is somehow going to stop oil usage, and therefore it's going to save the planet, which it's not. So
we're nowhere
more about like the planet.
Actually, and for what it's worth, in the book, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, even that author even talks about we are basically nowhere near the point at which like we would have a justifiable like mass wave of violence and protest against climate infrastructure. Like that, there will come a point where like. If like on our current path where like that could be the case, but like we're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the psychology that drives the protest, because they're rationalizing, they're using climate or whatever to rationalize acting out on aggressive impulses for some reason. Because there's plenty of people that care about climate.
Hang on, Jeff.
Feel the need to go out and vandalize things. So there's something peculiar to their psychology that takes them to that.
Who's the they? Is that just broadly climate protesters, or are you talking about
the violent one, the ones that are doing vandalism?
Well, yeah, of course, like
blowing up pipelines or
that's
gluing themselves to paintings.
Is gluing themselves to paint? Do you consider that to be violence?
Damaging fine art, yes.
Oh, okay.
Because it's vandalism, property crime.
And more than anything, I think it's just stupid. Like I think they deserve to go to jail just for being. It's just like you go to jail for causing a disruption in public kind of thing. You know, it doesn't further their cause. That's the thing that gets me. It doesn't further their cause any. It makes them look worse, and it makes people more likely to ignore climate change and be more against climate change regulations than it does the other. It doesn't. Can you imagine being someone who's like on the fence about climate change, and then seeing this person gluing themselves to a piece of art and being like, maybe they do have a point. You know, it's just like it doesn't like make
No,
any
yeah,
sense.
I agree. I mean, and for what it's worth, that's why like I at least when I've gotten involved with climate change protests, I very much vet who I'm working with, the organizations that
What do
I'm
you
working.
protest? Like, how do your protests work?
It kind of depends. So like I've gotten a little bit involved in Seattle with 350, who they do a few different kinds of things. I know they protested. What was it? Fucking. It was a bank a while ago. I didn't participate because like that. This was just after
Is
I.
it just like going out on the street and carrying signs and stuff?
Some of it, yeah. That's.
What's the other part?
It depends on like the exact thing. So like one of their big things is like talking about trying to get companies to divest from carbon producing industries. That's like basically the big thing where we're at is trying to get banks and like other investment corporations to divest their investments from oil.
So,
And
do you think by making yourself a nuisance to those people, that's gonna win them over to that
like investment
goal?
bankers, there's no winning. Yeah, there's no winning corporations over to the side
So,
of
if
like
that's your goal, and they're the ones that have the power to enact the change that you want to see, how is annoying them going to move them closer to that goal? Like, you want them to take a certain action,
yes, the action being divesting from
and
these
and
things
and how is harassing them going to motivate them to take that action?
because the idea being that the more people who so part of it is there's an understanding that these companies probably aren't going to actually divest. They're capitalist corporations. Their main motive is profit, and if there's profit to be had in the oil industry, even if it's killing the planet, they're gonna keep doing it. Like you know, so a part of it is to sort of get people's attention onto it. So that's what largely the
So it's
divestment.
not directed toward the actors themselves. It's the
It's
public.
directed towards other people to look at the actors and say, hey, please actually divest, getting more and more people to support that. Because
Does that ever work?
I mean, it's the option we have that's on the table.
But has anyone had success with it?
uh
On
there have
anything, not necessarily for this example, but just
there have been some isolated successes actually. Just broadly, as far as like climate change is concerned, the Biden administration has actually made some admittedly small but meaningful steps, most notably in the creation of the Climate Corps, um, uh, which you
it's
can.
creepy.
What do you mean?
It just sounds creepy. Climate core. I don't even know what that is, but it already
I
sounds creepy.
it's basically a a federal group that is going to get money and invest in green renewable energy in America.
I have a friend that was part of ACT UP in the early '90s, and they led this protest. Nancy Pelosi came to speak. I think it was in Ohio, and they would disrupt her speech. They would like go in with signs, and they had this guy with AIDS that they wanted to get on stage, and the security would throw him out, and then they wait a few minutes, and they go around the back and come back in, and they did that like 5 or 6 times, and then eventually Nancy said, "Okay, what do you want?" And they said, "We want like 5 minutes on the stage to speak, and we want this guy to speak." And Nancy said at the end of her speech, she would let them go up and talk, and they did, and it like started to motivate some kind of policy change. So that very disruptive strategy worked in that particular case. Although I would not have, I would have had them arrested.
Yeah. So like again, so see, like you don't even agree, even though it is even though it can work, like you just don't think it's good
No,
or whatever.
yeah, it
sure.
did work in this case, but they had to do it 5 or 6 times. And they kept getting thrown out, and they kept
Sure.
being
I
persistent.
I don't think any green policies we put in place here in the United States really matter because of developing countries and how much more
yeah. I mean,
the atmosphere.
It more like green policies here in the United States more has to do with like, I mean, actually it has to do with a couple things. Like it does have to do with, we are, I don't want to say like the leading country that other people take their, cues from, but like we are, like a lot of countries take their cues from American American political sphere. So changes that we make can affect other countries. So if we, were to say change over to like green energy production, some of that would spill over into other countries. But in addition, like it is just broadly good to not be dependent on oil and natural gas.
I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I've said for a long time, like anything we can do to preserve the planet, to make the planet better, I'm all for it. I don't, but I think a lot of the green policy and everything they keep suggesting for our country are ineffectual and ultimately aren't going to make a lot of difference. Whenever like I put this thing to share. Have you seen this clip from Constant Kissin where he's talking to like Oxford about like his particular view on climate change?
I have not. Where'd you put it?
Is it when we can play?
Yeah, it's in Wingwilly. Yeah. Just share that. I put the screen to share. Just like add it to the thing.
Oh, okay.
Here,
I want to talk to those of you who are woke and who are open to rational argument. A small minority, I accept.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Because one of the tenets of wokeness is, of course, that your feelings matter more than the truth. But I believe in you. I believe there are those of you here who are woke, who are open to rational argument. So let me make one. We are told that your generation cares more than any other about one issue in particular, and that issue is climate change. We're told that many of you suffer from climate anxiety. You wish to save the planet. And for tonight, and tonight only, I will join you. I will join you in worshipping at the feet of Saint Greta of climate change. Let us all accept right here, right now, that we are living through a climate emergency and our stocks of polar bears are running extremely low. I join you in this view. I truly do. Now, what are we to do about this huge problem facing humanity? What can we in Britain do? We can only do one thing. You know why? This country is responsible for 2% of global carbon emissions, which means that if Britain was to sink into the sea right now, it would make absolutely no difference to the issue of climate change. You know why? Because the future of the climate is going to be decided in Asia and in Latin America by poor people who couldn't give a shit about saving the planet. No, thank you. No, thank you. It's going to be decided by poor people in Asia and Latin America who don't care about saving the planet. You know why? Because they're poor. Because they're poor. I come from Russia, which is not a poor country, it's a middle-income country. 20% of households in Russia do not have an indoor toilet. What they have is an outdoor toilet. And I don't mean one of those nice portaloos that we get here. I don't even mean a Glastonbury portaloo. I mean a wooden shack with a hole in the ground that holds a collected fermented memory of the last 10,000 visits. How many of you are going to go home tonight and say, let's rip out our bathroom and erect a Siberian shithouse in the back garden? And if you're not, why should they? 120 million people in China do not have enough food. I don't mean that they don't get dessert. I mean they suffer from malnutrition. That means that their immune system is breaking down because they don't have enough food. You're not going to get them to stay poor. Imagine you're Xi Jinping, the leader of China. When you were 10 years old, There was a revolution, a cultural revolution in your country, and people came and they put your father in prison. Your mother had to denounce him. Your sister killed herself. And you, no longer enjoying the protection of your formerly powerful father, were sent to a village where you lived in a cave house. And here you are, decades later. You have clawed your way up the bloody and greasy pole of Chinese politics to be the undisputed supreme leader of the very Communist Party that destroyed your family. And you know that the main thing you have to do to survive and to stay in power is to deliver the one thing that the people of China want: prosperity, economic growth. Where do you think climate change ranks on Xi Jinping's list of priorities? A third of all children who live in extreme poverty in the world live in India. That means they are starving and dying of preventable disease. Now, about 15 months ago, my wife got pregnant. Not me, because we're old school. And for 9 months, we talked about what our boy would look like, what he might do when he grows up. We looked at baby scans and videos on YouTube about what the fetus looks like at 9 months and 12 months and 20 months. And eventually he was born. And he is this cute little bundle of joy. He's cuter than about 80% of puppies, right? Now, if you said to me that I had a choice, either my son had a serious risk of starving or dying from a preventable disease in the next year, or I could press a button and he would live. He would go to school. He would bring his first girlfriend home. He'd go to university and graduate and become a woke idiot. And then he'd get a job and get married and have children and become a man. But all I have to do is press this button. And for every day of my son's life, a giant plume of CO2 is going to get released into the atmosphere. Now, you're all very young, and most of you are not parents. Let me tell you something. There is not a parent in the world who would not smash that button so hard their hand bled. You are not going to get these people to stay poor. You're not even going to get them to not want to be richer. And so, I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, there is only one thing we can do in this country to stop climate change. And that is to make scientific and technological breakthroughs that will create the clean energy that is not only clean, but also cheap. And no, thank you. And I want everyone to get home on time today, which is not going to happen. And the only thing that wokeness has to offer in exchange is to brainwash bright young minds like you to believe that you are victims, to believe that you have no agency, to believe that what you must do to improve the world is to complain, is to protest, is to throw soup on paintings. And we on this side of the house are not on this side of the house because we do not wish to improve the world. We sit on this side of the house because we know that the way to improve the world is to work, is to create, it is to build. And the problem with woke culture is that it's trained too many young minds like yours to forget about that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't hear anything. What was the relevance to climate change and all the things he was talking about?
That you're not gonna, like, the path to climate change is to innovate. You're not to restrict your current behavior or energy use. So, like, harassing people to cut
Chris,
down on their car is not the path forward.
Chris, you're still muted.
Chris, would you mash the button? Would you mash the button?
Yes, I would mash the button in a heartbeat.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Yeah, but I don't see how that's relevant though. It's
relevant. It's relevant because what he's saying is that the only way forward, the only way to fix this, is by focusing on on trying to improve and not instead of trying to revert and try to like pull back. It's the only way out of this is through. We're already too far deep in. Like according to all the climate models that exist that have been saying this,
Yes.
we're already fucked. Like
Yeah.
the only thing to do is to try to innovate,
what
create new solutions.
When you say fucked, what we mean is that like it's the difference between you know, 1 billion people being affected by climate change and 2 billion people being affected by climate change. That's like the over the next 10 years, right? Like that's the scale like we're looking at. You know, on our best case scenario, only 1 billion, 1.5 billion people will be displaced or severely negatively affected by climate change. Whereas if, you know, on the worst end, 2-3 billion people.
My understanding is that, but the way climate change works is that a serious degree of climate change in one part of the world is going to have domino effects that are going to affect the rest of the world. No matter if if the climate is seriously affected in one part, affects 1 billion people here, it's going to affect those other 1 billion people eventually anyway.
Well, yeah,
and like,
no, yeah.
And
just
so,
like in the next 10 years, you know, like that's what we're looking at is like, okay, so over the next 10 years, if we can reduce the whatever there's the like 1.5 degrees increase as opposed like which is like the minimum, you know, like that's like the best case scenario is it only increases 1.5 degrees, but like the worst case scenario is it increases 4 degrees over the next like 30 years. And whereas like 4 degrees is like bad as shit, like affects the entire world. 1.5, it only affects the absolute poorest in the world. Like,
but how are you getting them to reduce? Because he just said, like, you're not going to get poor people to stop.
Well, well, I mean, there's a number of ways that you can reduce it.
You have to get China to reduce. You have to get India to reduce. How are you going to do that when they're incentivized to do the complete opposite?
By incentivizing them to do the other things. So, like,
to stay poor.
Oh my God, Jeff! Like seriously,
no, I mean, it's a serious question. I mean, I don't think he's not being a dick
I'm
right
now. From the video we just watched. So if you have a problem with it,
like you're acting like that's a dichotomy. The dichotomy is
he's acting like it's a dichotomy,
and he's a fucking idiot.
I don't think he's a fucking idiot
because
at all.
It's not. It's not a dichotomy. It's not like, oh yeah, let's just like fucking ignore all of the damage we're actively doing
come
right
on our
now.
show and clear this up for us.
It's not like, oh yeah, let's just like fucking ignore all the damage we're doing and instead just you know, depend solely and entirely on some wonder weapon that's gonna save us all. Like maybe that we don't even know if it exists yet. Like there are things that we can do today that can have positive effects on the climate.
But we are not the problem. It has to be things that China and India can do today.
Part of it is that.
Sure, and I do think the U.S. should do whatever we can to try to reduce CO2 emissions and to try to try to push. I mean, I wish electric cars were the answer, but they're not because most of the
they're not.
Most of the is produced by.
I was about to say the bigger answer is going to be shifting our national
hybrids are way better. Hybrids are way better for the environment, and trains aren't really a good. And those also pump out tons of CO2. So do buses. Yes. So do everything else. Like I mean, like no matter even public transportation doesn't ultimately really. It might reduce it very slightly, but the margins are so tiny.
Yes, and the big thing that we need to be focusing on is shifting our energy grid. We need to have a renewable energy grid. However. Okay, but
we need to have nuclear, and we need to start.
Yeah, nuclear is one of those. It's a now nuclear is one of those it's one of those things that we would have to invest heavily, and it wouldn't really make any major changes for the next 30 years because constructing nuclear power plants is really, really expensive and time consuming. But there are things we can do now, steps we can take in addition to building these nuclear power plants that can help us but we're not is the problem. it's not even that we're not doing things fast enough. It's that we're like not doing the thing. We're not taking the steps towards the good solutions. We're like waiting on Elon Musk to invent our way out of climate change.
You don't think there are people working on this?
No.
There definitely are.
There are people working on this, but like the problem is this is like a government level thing, and our government isn't taking steps in that direction.
And that sounds like
what
true.
about
like,
the climate
we're
core?
getting close with battery technology. If we can get the battery technology up there, where we can actually have superconductor batteries, like we almost thought we did earlier this year.
Yeah.
If something like that can happen, that would change everything.
Yeah, superconductors would like. Yeah, there's tons of things that would completely revamp things, but unfortunately, right now, none of those are like here yet. So like,
well, I'm just saying, if we put more of our effort, instead of into protesting and complaining and stuff like that, we put more effort into trying to actually learn, having this younger generation learn and trying to like work on that kind of stuff, and we would have a much better chance.
Okay, I think it's a valid complaint that our government is not taking any.
I thought you said Biden just created this climate core, which is going to dump a bunch of money into.
Which is a positive step, but it's not like the most positive step. And it's also like, it's also happened in 2023 as opposed to, 1980. It's too little too late. Like,
so you don't want him to do it? Like, you'd rather him not do it?
No, I do want him to do it. I also think that we should absolutely be taking active steps to completely revitalize our energy grid.
Yeah,
entirely.
I do too, but I think that requires people getting into
I don't
politics.
know that we're not.
I think that it requires people getting into politics and pushing policy and pushing things like that. I just don't think that the protests and things like that have any actual real impact. I think that they ultimately have a negative impact on the concept of trying to fight climate change. I think that they make people feel, and not to mention the fact that the messaging around climate change tends to be we're fucked.
The messaging does need to be improved significantly, because the thing is, like, I guess, like, you can call me like a fucking climate doomer or whatever, but like the truth is we are fucked. Not like you and me, but like a large number of people are going to suffer and die because of climate change over the next like 50 to 100 years, who otherwise wouldn't have. And my thing is just, hey, we can stymie this as much as possible if we do things. We just have to do the things.
I think we are doing that. I think there are people out there working on.
And maybe not enough of them, and maybe it's not enough. But I do think that we're moving in that right direction. I think the wrong direction is the protest section, which I think is just like completely facile and doing nothing besides making the people that actually care about this thing look bad. It's making climate scientists making climate.
I guess I don't understand what people mean when they say like, oh, people complaining. Like the founding fathers complained too. Do you think they were wrong to complain?
They complained, but they also created. They acted. They developed their own solutions.
So, but just so we're clear, their first solution was terrorism. So, the Boston Tea Party was terrorism.
Well, yeah, I mean that was the beginning of the American Revolution too.
That was terrorism.
It's a little bit more than just terrorism, but yeah, sure.
No. I mean, the beginning of the American Revolution was absolutely an act of terrorism.
But they were, but just like people have been occupying, been arguing about Gaza and stuff like that. They were under an occupying force that was was.
Yeah, no, he makes a good point. You make a good point. I have a hard time.
I'm not. No. The word terrorism isn't inherently bad. The problem is like what terrorists do, right? So like Hamas, for instance, targeted civilians. That's bad. The founding fathers.
Dump a bunch of tea into the ocean,
which is still not good, but it's better than targeting civilians. Though even then, during the American Revolution, there absolutely were innocent civilians who were like killed by colonists. Like there were like judges and yeah, like there were absolutely acts of terrorism committed to the British and by the British during the American Revolution. I'm just like, I'm willing to understand that these words aren't like magically bad. The word doesn't make, it's not magically bad. It's the act that you have to look at the acts. Right?
I mean, I think I kind of think of the Boston Tea Party as more like vandalism than terrorism, but I guess it counts, I suppose. Sure.
It is terrorism. It's just, terrorism by white people. So
it's about tea. So
yeah, they were complaining about
it's terrorism. It's
it's terrorism. I love it.
I mean, like, what the most harmful thing we could do to the British was by destroying their tea. It's kind of funny when you think about it. But
yeah. Also, when that guy said, if Britain were to sink into the ocean, my only thought there was, please don't threaten me with a good time. That's the only racism towards British people. Only acceptable.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, I see, I see what you mean. And like, whenever we're, we're dealing with like, I mean, like the beginning of the American Revolution was, it was a different circumstance than some of the things, but there's definitely some similarities there. You can't deny.
Similar to like the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian Revolution, absolutely, they did a bunch of terrorism. They even did some really bad terrorism. They went and like, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Haitian Revolution, but after the revolution, a lot of the full black, revolutionaries basically coerced the sort of half black revolutionaries in order to quote unquote prove their loyalty, had them go door to door and like either expel or murder some of the white colonists. That was bad terror. That was worse terrorism than they had actually done. Really fucked up. It was less fucked up when they rose up and like killed their like slave masters. It was more fucked up when they went and like murdered the families of those slave masters.
Yeah. And there are historians, by the way, that do argue that the Boston Tea Party was not a good thing even for the American revolutionaries. That it would actually end up being somewhat of a setback.
Yeah.
In terms of like their public perception, everything like that it was a bad idea. I typically think that any kind of act like that, I don't think that it almost ever, that I'm aware of, really ever furthers the goals of the revolutionaries. I feel like anytime you end up doing something that's vandalism or terrorism in that sense, I feel like it usually puts you in a bad light, and therefore it usually turns people against you and not for you. There's very few times whenever someone sees a bunch of cars getting bombed on the street that have nothing to do with anything, and like they're like, oh, you know what? I think maybe these guys are onto something. It doesn't work like that. It comes across as just like, it comes across as petty and violent, and I think it's usually bad. I think even though I suppose there can't be any revolution without some degree of something violent happening, but I think that generally acts like that do not help the cause they're trying to help.
For what it's worth, the Boston Tea Party, as far as like acts of terrorism goes, was a relatively mild one. Yeah. I mean, it was cringe and like didn't actually do that much helpful, but like they didn't like murder a bunch of people. And in fact, arguably, the Boston Tea Party was somewhat in response to the Boston Massacre. So arguably, like, it is more of one of those like terrorism leaning towards freedom fighters kind of vibe, even though they were stupid freedom fighters who didn't actually make a actual dent in
And I'll give them credit. I'll give the Boston Tea Party people credit too. In fact, they actually went after something that was like a center of power, as opposed to like say your average BLM protest that burnt down their own neighborhoods, as opposed to going after the rich people they were actually mad at. I find that, or like I find it. I always find it so stupid whenever like these protesters end up burning down their own neighborhoods. They burn down like local markets and stuff like that. At least with the Boston Tea Party, they were going after like the what was it the big trade company. It was like the
East India Trading Company.
Yeah, they were going to they went after the East Indian Trading Company. That was an attack on the East Indian, which was like one of those powerful companies in the world. So they were going after a center of power, an actual like that was truly punching up. In every sense.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I don't like whatever like BLM thing you're talking about. I don't support it. When I participated in BLM, it was relatively peaceful. Like there were riot cops, but like there wasn't really any fighting.
I mean, I was shocked by the amount of violence that took place in Dallas alone during the BLM protest. There was like some shop owner downtown, not even like one of the main parts. I mean, there was no nothing like that happened. Nothing like George Floyd happened in Dallas, and yet there were protesters out there that hunted down and killed like this Asian shop owner that was trying to protect his shop and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's
there was a couple of things like that happened, and I was just like, it was shameful. It's just like I don't care like what you're. Just because they have this whole philosophy that anybody who owns a shop or something is somehow a capitalist and therefore they must be evil and all that shit like that. It's just like
actually even more than that. I'll even go further and I'll say even a small business owner, even who may even own their business, is not necessarily a capitalist, because a lot of times that person is heavily in debt to a bank.
Exactly.
So like even calling that kind of person a capitalist would be not necessarily the case. Like sure, they quote unquote own things, but like,
well, he was an immigrant. He wasn't even like an American. He wasn't.
Oh, I do actually remember hearing about that. Yeah, there were also for what it's worth, there were also instances of BLM protesters protecting those kinds of people from the violent protesters at BLM protests. So just keeping that in mind. Also, like the amount of people who like cried about like, okay, so I have family who lives in Louisville, Kentucky, and they were like, oh yeah, BLM burned down Louisville, and it's like, no, there was very isolated amounts of property damage that was very minimal, and like just what you would expect for a large amount of people marching in the street, not like people like burning down a Target, right? Like it was like some minor property damage, because when you have thousands of people grouped together, like that kind of stuff happens. Not to say that it's good, but like it's not exceptional. So
what wasn't BLM the founders or whatever like millionaires that bought all these mansions?
They became, after all the donations, they did.
The BLM organization is different than people who participated in BLM marches. When I participated in the Black Lives Matter marches in Memphis, was not affiliated with the Black Lives Matter organization at all. Neither was the organization that I marched with. It's just
that's very confusing to the public, because I think they see it.
I'm aware it's a frustrating and annoying thing. However, like I guess like what else am I supposed to like call? I mean, I guess I could call them the George Floyd protests. Like,
I get it. I get what you're saying. I mean, like it like whenever they created the BLM corporation or whatever, like the nonprofit they created, and then they went off and embezzled this money and basically just like paid money. Like, I mean, it's just
fuck them. And I don't stand them. They're not my family. That's not my dad. That's
they don't. Yeah, they don't represent. They don't represent a large. And I know.
Well, so just take another name, like not a name that associates.
Okay, fine. The George Floyd protests then.
Yeah.
But then, like, people will be like, "Oh, didn't you know George Floyd actually died of
So why do you
fentanyl?"
care if people be a certain way? If you believe in it,
Well, it's more to like, okay, so like the way in which you optics and rhetoric are important, and I believe that the optics of using Black Lives Matter as an umbrella term is worth the cost of the BLM organization bullshit, as long as you're talking to someone who isn't like coming at it in bad faith. Because obvious, like if I say I participated in a BLM protest, most people, at least as far as I've talked to, understand that what I meant is I participated in a protest against police brutality around the time of like George Floyd's death and like those protests. Not I'm a part of the BLM organization who embezzles money.
Yeah, no, I completely I understand how you feel about that.
There are absolutely people who take it in that manner, but like those people are all in bad faith anyways. So like
I have a low opinion of both. Like I don't have a high
that's
opinion
fine.
of BLM.
Well, that's fine, but you're not like sure, but your low opinion isn't because of like a bad faith thing. Your low opinion is
No, I mean
really
I
like
think
protests.
you're sincere in your beliefs about whatever you protested for. I don't agree with them.
I mean that's fine. I don't really require you to, but anyways, I'm gonna go play Lethal Company with my girlfriend.
Okay, good talking to you, man.
Yep.
Good
Great talking to you.
chatting.
I enjoyed the movie, and I will be looking forward to our movie night next week.
Yeah,
have a good night.
We do it every Friday, and then we do it a lot of times just during the week too. We probably do a few this weekend. So just keep it on the movie announcement channel. That's where we announce them.
I try to remember to put the name of the movie in like the
chat. Yeah,
and also it automatically like whatever you're sharing, it displays that as well.
Yeah,
the time.
I'll make some communist recommendations.
Sure.
Oh, God.
I mean, I like movies of all kinds. I don't care. I mean,
I don't even know what communist movies I would. Andor. Hey, there we go. Andor.
That's a movie.
No, it's a TV show. Yeah. It is really good though.
It is good. I only saw the first couple episodes, but it was pretty decent. And I'd even be down to watch some of like Guy Debord's situationist films from the 60s or something at some point, just to see some socialist propaganda films.
Oh God! Oh
no!
Some of them are okay.
They're most of them are pretty bad, but I have a pet like fascination with situationism. I think situationists like that. For situationists, like the only truly based form of socialism, because they were completely honest about their selfish wants and desires, like that they just didn't want to work.
Hey, look, no. Here's the actually what my favorite is. It's not even socialism. It's the Diggers. If any of y'all are familiar with the Diggers,
yeah,
that sounds familiar.
It was a British movement in like the 1600s or whatever. It was a really religious movement, but they were very proto-socialist. There's a song about it actually. It's really good. Y'all should check out the Diggers. But anyways, I'm gonna leave y'all with that. So y'all have a good night.
Have fun.
Good night.
I will.
Good night.
Well, hey Cascadian, good to see you. And Ron hopped on for a little while, but now he's
he went back. I guess he wasn't interested in the discussion about the protest thing.
The climate change.
He jumped back on. He jumped back onto Discord to talk.
Yeah,
I was looking up the Diggers here. They were associated with agrarian socialism. The original name came to the belief that economic equality based upon a specific passage in the Acts of the Apostles. Diggers tried by leveling land to reform the social order with an agrarian lifestyle based on their ideas from the creation of small egalitarian rural communities. There were a number of nonconformist dissenting groups that emerged around the same time. didn't really tell me much about them, but
Yeah, these ideas have been around for like ever. Like,
yeah.
I don't think anything original, but I do think, because Ron makes the point of how we evolve to exist in smaller communities. There is something to this push for things like communes or like trad culture's thing of going back to a more like primitive way of living. Like there is something in our culture now that's pulling toward even me and what we're doing here, smaller scale communities.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean,
I think there's something to kind of restore or revitalize religion or the religious and or mythological impulse, and there's also something to kind of restore that sense of community that you get in the smaller scale groups.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's is I mean I would never want to start like a commune per se, but so I mean like I said I see the value in a truly idealistic situation that just doesn't exist on a mass scale, and truly in a true idealistic society. I do see that like a socialist or communist type thing would be like an amazing place. It would be this amazing utopian type
It would
thing.
be like the beach.
What's that?
The beach.
Kind of like the beach, but like, and the beach is kind of like is kind of a critique of that kind of thing as well. Like the fact that
like the whole movie, it looked good on the surface, but then
it shows its true authoritarian leanings towards the end. Like the fact that like the woman in control really did have an iron grip on things, and she decided like who. She would decide like who could leave and who couldn't and things like that. Like then that's the kind of things that, and to a degree, you can almost kind of like sympathize with where she's coming from. In order for her to maintain the little paradise thing they have, it's almost required for like the things that she was trying to implement. In order for those to just let anybody in creates problems because you have to like vet people and all this stuff like that. So it's really it's something that happens in all these kind of communities like that. Like I said, like Japuza has been going strong for like since the 60s. And the Japuza, it's a Jesus People USA. That they are a Christian commune that exists in Chicago.
Oh, is that the one you were involved in?
I was never involved in it. No, I went to their music festival a few times. I talked to a lot of the people that ran it because I was fascinated with the concept of it. I never wanted to be a communist, but I was fascinated with like how they would, how their lifestyle worked, because it just didn't make sense to me. Like what does it mean to be a part of like their thing, and like they told me they went into like great detail about like the whole process and everything, and it was very complicated. And it was very like there was like you basically were on like if you even got past the application process and the interview process, you were on like probation for like a year, and like
I wouldn't stick around for that. I don't even like the 90-day probation periods at a job.
I know, right? I mean, but it was to make sure that you really wanted to be there, like that and that you were going to mesh with actually going to mesh with the community, and in that 90 days, if you were, I mean, that year or so, maybe it wasn't 90 days, maybe it wasn't a year, maybe it was like 90 days, maybe it was 6 months or something like that. I can't remember now. It's been years and years, but in that probation period, if there's anything about you that like they feel uncomfortable about, they just ask you to leave. And the people that do ultimately get to stay, like part of the one of the rules, like they had like you couldn't you kind of weren't allowed to like you could date people, but you couldn't start a family or anything because that introduced like
don't tell me what to do. That's the problem with these communities.
But it wasn't like, but you knew about it before you went into it. These are all rules that were all very well established up front. You had to agree to all the stuff before you joined it. I mean, I'm not saying, once again, I was never even like tempted to try to even like join it. I was just fascinated with what they were doing because I thought it was interesting because it was so different from any kind of lifestyle I'd ever heard of. And like, and the more they told me about it, the less I was interested in it anyway. I wasn't even interested in the first place, but I certainly wasn't about to get involved. But I still thought it was fascinating, and like the fact they've been going strong. But their I think their maximum size for their commune, the maximum number of people they could ever have, at one time, I think was under 40 people. I can't remember the exact number, but it was under 40 people. That was the biggest they would ever let it get to. And so like if they were at maximum capacity, and it would, the only way that you would someone could be, could apply and could become a member was if someone's if voluntarily left or died or something like that. And generally speaking, they didn't recommend that people stay in the commune for longer than 3 to 5 years. That was generally like what they considered like that was most people's like limit for that, because eventually people want to go off and have families. They want to do stuff like that, and that at that point you would leave and go find your own way. It was like it was an alternative living type of thing that you would have to really want to do and have to really believe in. It was Christian too. It was very heavily Christian. It was really centered heavily around like studying the Bible. It was almost like a seminary, almost like a monk type thing. Like if you were going to be like a monk for like going to be a Buddhist monk or something, you're going to go to a monastery. It was very similar to like that, except it was much more modern. They like their building is in downtown Chicago. It's like they have like this really big building, this like 4-story building in downtown Chicago they all live in. And they put on like that giant music festival I used to go to. And like they're really nice, interesting people. None of them were weird or gave you like bad vibes or anything like that. But they were very like, they were very adamant of the fact that this is not for everybody. This is not something that the reason they put all those rules and stuff like that on there, because like they know that most people aren't, even if it sounds like something they might want to be part of, that they're not. They know that most people aren't going to be into it. And whenever it comes right down to it, because you don't have like, you're allowed to have like a certain number of personal possessions, but for the most part, like everything you do, you have like, you have to get up and you have to like, work the garden. Everybody has a job. Everybody has to like, contribute a certain amount of like,
that doesn't sound fun.
It doesn't at all. It doesn't sound fun at all. No, it sounds kind of horrible. But I guess, but it's the same. But it'd be the same thing if you're a monk in a monastery, though. If you go and like go there, you're going to have a job to like go out and you're going to, till the soil, you're going to do this or that. And everybody kind of like works together to create a sustainable society within that, So, I mean, it can work. But I mean, it's nothing that appeals to me, but I see the appeal of it for certain people. It just doesn't appeal to me personally. I can understand how someone could want to do it, but I wasn't, I want to do it. I'm far too individualistic. I mean, you really do have to like make yourself part of that collective and become part of the collective and kind of be okay with being. And that they were very egalitarian. Like they voted on everything. Everything was voted upon by the whole group. Like once you're past the year point, is when you got to vote. And things like that. It was really interesting though, and I think that they were interesting people. But it was just like proof to me that communes can work, but on a very small scale. And once you get past a certain point, it just becomes too chaotic, and there's too many people. There's too many cooks in the kitchen, kind of thing. There's too many people that want to have, that want to pull things in different directions, and past a certain point, it just doesn't work. And that's how I feel about. That's how I think. Socialism is maybe a little bit more flexible than communism is. Communism is very, very rigid in that sense. Everyone has to contribute what they have to contribute for the society to work. Socialism allowed a little bit more of like a little bit more of some kind of capitalist-ish kind of things, and a little bit more freedom for personal property and things like that. But it still requires like some degree of like an authoritarian type state to be willing to dictate who does what. That's why the dictator, that's why a dictator exists. I mean, like I was very young whenever I first encountered the ideas of socialism and communism, where I first like thought that they sounded cool to me, and then very, very quickly, like within a few months of learning about them, was very quickly decided that they didn't sound like something I'd ever want to do or something I'd want to be a part of.
Okay.
It didn't take me long to dissuade myself of that notion. But even one of my favorite, like I mentioned earlier, Andrei Tarkovsky, my favorite filmmaker of all time. He grew up in socialist Russia, and his first few films were kind of more or less propaganda films for the Russian government. But over time, and same with Krzysztof Kieslowski, they both were raised one was raised in Poland and the other one was raised in communist Russia, and they both ultimately were exiled from their homeland just for making films that just didn't quite mesh with like the concept the state had with like what their art was, and in order for them to make the movies they want to make, they had to literally basically become expats from their own country. They had to leave their countries forever. Both of them died in exile in other countries because because they as much as like they saw some value maybe in like what they did. They ultimately felt that that those systems were antithetical to any kind of sense of individuality of freedom. And I think that it's really useful to see those kind of examples in real life. Like I don't see many. You can like it's kind of amazing, like the films that Tarkovsky and Kieslowski both made underneath like those communist regimes were amazing films, but they were both very very blatantly they towed the line until they didn't anymore, and they started being critical of their government. And when they started getting critical of the government, that's whenever the government started basically they had to flee before they got arrested. Um, and so anytime you're living in a situation like that where you can't even be, that's one thing about America that I do believe in America so much. Why I am so pro America is because we can be critical of our government here. We can complain about it. We can do that here, and that's okay. And it's not even. I mean, so there's some people that will maybe call you anti-American. Maybe I might get mad at you, but we're fully encouraged to some degree to criticize our government. I think that's very important. I think that anytime you have a government organization that wants to control the the opinions and the expressed opinions of people to make sure they're only saying the right things that are in favor of the government, that's a very bad place to be in, I think. So. Even if it's like woke ideology or whatever it is that they're enforcing, it doesn't matter because if they can get away with enforcing people to that's the reason Jordan Peterson got that's what got him so upset about the thing in Canada, because his thing wasn't just because he didn't want to call trans people by their preferred pronouns, is because he saw compelled speech as the first step towards a true fascist dictatorship. Because if they can get you to say that to call people by something that to you seems false or something like that, if they can get you to lie in favor in accordance with laws in the state, then what's the next step? Then they're going to get you to then they're going to keep you from criticizing the government. They're going to keep you from criticizing anything else. It's just one step in that path, and it's not hard to see how those kind of progressions happen, and so anyway. Yeah, I thought we had a couple of people that were going to jump on. I thought maybe Neurojack would come back. I thought
he didn't even show up for the movie, did he?
No, he didn't. But he messaged and said he had to go do some family stuff or something like that. But then he never.
Oh well, that's good.
Yeah, no,
family stuff should take priority.
I agree. I thought my friend Mark might stop by too.
But is he still trapped in the video chat?
Yeah, I think he just did. I think he actually clicked in there. I don't think he realized he has to push the button to disconnect from it. Because he just went back to another thing. Because you can go into the video chat and still be in one of the other Discord channels, and the other things, and not until you hit that disconnect button, it just stays there. So I tried to message him on it and tried to see if he could hear me, but I think he'd already turned it off. He'd walked from his computer. He said he had to go make a stew. So he's a cool guy. You'd like him. He lives in Alaska now. I grew up with him in Texarkana, but he grew up in Alaska, and he lives in Alaska now. Not too long ago, I guess, got married. He has 2 kids, and he's a real out of the box thinker himself. He's a real funny guy, and I think he'd be a great addition to a great person to have on the stream sometime, because he's got a real good sense of humor, and he has a lot of good opinions on things. So. But so Cascadian said him and his girlfriend, I guess, are going to watch a Christmas parade. Okay, well, good for you, man. I cannot imagine.
Oh, like a real parade in person, not on TV.
I can't imagine anything more boring than going and watching a parade, especially in the cold like this. But good for you. What?
I love a parade.
I know you said you love parades. I can't stand them. I can't stand parades, and now, with the exception of one. I generally find fireworks shows to be completely boring too, but we saw one out here in Dallas one year in the really rich part of Dallas and up north, since it's a little park called Addison, and like they put on this firework display out this one year that absolutely blew my freaking brain. Like it just like blew me away. It was like they did such crazy fucking things with the fireworks. Like I had never seen anybody do stuff like that. I kind of describe it now, but that one was cool. But we actually pulled up. We were driving by and we just like pulled off the highway just to find a place to go watch it because it was that cool. But for the most part, I don't understand the fascination with fireworks and parades and shit like that. That's why I thought I said the same thing with statues too. I'm like, fucking tear all the statues down. I don't give a shit. Statues are dumb. What can I really learn from a statue, really, you know?
From what?
What can I really learn from a statue in general, you know? I don't see the point of statues. Statues, parades. I was in a lot of parades when I was younger too, and like it still didn't give me any real appreciation for it. I don't know. I might have hated the parades I was in even more just because like I was always like one of the people that was marching and had to like walk that long ass like route. You know? Usually like we used to do this thing. They used to do this thing where like it was part of the church thing I was in when I was younger, and they used to put us in like clown makeup for some reason. I can't remember why. I was recruited to be like a mime or something. And so I had to like walk in a parade a couple times and be a mime, and it was very weird. It was not something I was like skilled in, so I don't know why they put me in that. But one year they put me in like full on body and face makeup and give me a costume, and they dressed me up like the devil. I looked like you know a traditional like Christian devil, like with the red horns and everything. And I went up and down the streets of Hot Springs, Arkansas. And with a guy with a camera and a microphone and ask people, try to convince people to come to hell with me. That was fun. there was some fun kind of like that's almost something that I feel like maybe I could resurrect that for doing content today. That might be fun, you know, just to like just to fuck with people. I don't know. It was very Christian, but the responses we got weren't very like it wasn't like people being like, no, I believe in Jesus type of thing. People like usually played around with it, played along with it and stuff like that. It was fun. I don't know this person. Christ brings a sword. Parades not what they used to be. Well, nice seeing you in the chat. Christ brings a sword. Feel free to come on the panel if you want.
Oh, what's Christ doing here? And with a sword.
Yeah,
that sounds cool.
I love that quote from the Bible that Christ comes with a sword, not with a something. Christ brings a sword, not something. What's the
bring
line?
a sword?
Well, Christ at one point he says
would the Roman even allow that?
Well, at one point he says he comes with a sword, not as something. What does he says?
Yeah, but why would you say you came with a sword if you didn't have a sword? Although he talked in.
Oh, well, yeah. He says, I did not come to bring peace. He says, I did not come to bring peace, but I've come not to bring peace.
He was a troublemaker.
Yeah. It says, because Christ came to sever the ties between us and our sins is what this particular interpretation of it is. I don't think that's really what he meant. He was saying that he was here to tear down, he was here to tear down like the structures and everything. Like he was the ultimate revolutionary, you know. He wasn't here to just to do nice things.
Every revolutionary thinks that. They almost have to, I think, to be successful revolutionaries. Parades are not. I haven't been to a parade in forever. The 4th of July parade here was very amateur. But I tried to watch the Macy's parade on TV, and oh my God, it was the most awful piece of crap. I was having a physically like sick reaction, a repulsive reaction to it. It was woke. They had this musical about corn, and they all had corn on the cob, and they would dance and sing about corn, and they would like stick it in their mouth and pull it out their butt, and they'd say like it goes in the same way it comes out or something. I'm like, this is so fucking stupid. It was like a musical, and I'm like, is there a musical about corn? And sure enough, it was the troupe from this musical called Shucked, which is a musical all about corn.
Wow.
The floats were ugly. The singers were bad. It was so cringe. The host, they used to just comment on the floats, like, "Oh, look at here, we have the turkey coming by." Now they like give these little skits, like children's show skits, like, "Hey, Tommy, look at the turkey coming up. What do you think about that? What do turkeys do?" And they like do these little. I don't know. I had my skin crawling. I could not. It almost ruined my Thanksgiving. I had to turn it off. It put me in such a bad mood for the rest of the day.
I bet, man. That sounds terrible.
It's not at all like I remember it.
I haven't tried to watch one in a very long time, so I don't even know what to say about that. But yeah, that sounds terrible.
It's like it was dumbed down and made for children. It was like infantilized. It used to seem something like the whole family could get something out of, and this one seemed specifically geared toward like the new Disney woke audience. So it was bad. So yes, Christ is right. At least that one parade, not where he used to be. Well, I'm sorry that you're here with a sword and there's nobody to really use it on tonight.
Yeah.
Want to come on and do battle with us?
Yeah, come on and tell us your parade experiences so we can commiserate together with it. I don't know. I mean, I guess since that's pretty much since that was our. I mean, I will say about the movie again. Going back to the Scanner Darkly, I think that it does. I think that the ending of it, the whole ending twist of it, kind of comes about kind of suddenly. I do think that does kind of come out of nowhere. It feels like towards the end, I feel like it leads up to it very well. There's like it's like, and I guess it's like the thing that bothered me about the first time I remember watching was like I didn't understand like why Winona Ryder's character keeps constantly repeating how she does a lot of coke. She's just like, oh, she it's like, I just do a lot of coke. I just do a lot of coke, and I'm just like what does that have to do with anything?
Wait, what?
You know, she says that throughout the whole movie. Every time Keanu Reeves' character tries to get close to her, she's like, no, I just do a lot of coke. I do too much coke.
Who's this?
The Winona Ryder character in A Scanner Darkly.
Oh, okay, yeah, the movie.
I remember not understanding that the first time. I understood that a little bit more this time, I guess, because like she was literally just his handler, and she was trying to not to. She didn't really want to sleep with him, so she was using that bizarre kind of like she was saying that she couldn't think of anything. It almost seemed like it was.
But she used that because that other guy was the Robert Downey guy said the same thing, that she has this aversion to touch, but he could teach him the right way to get past it and sleep with her. So apparently she was using it with all the guys.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, it had nothing to do with the movie. There was no reason to have that in there or not have it in it. It added. It was just a random piece.
Well, no, it was in there because of the fact that, like, you know, because they were supposed to be a couple, and the fact that she was just his handler. She wasn't actually. She was just the handler. She was the boss that he kept reporting to. She was the same guy, and that was the reveal.
But if you're gonna do what she did to him, it doesn't matter if you sleep with him or not. It's not gonna make it any.
True, but the thing is, she didn't want to sleep with him because she just saw him as like he was a pawn to him. So she just used it as
but when you're in that role, like, don't you have to sometimes sleep with people to keep your cover?
Maybe, but I guess she figured that she didn't have to because he was a junkie. I guess.
But then it wouldn't explain why she did it with the other, like how Robert Downey Jr.'s character knew about it too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if she ever slept with him or not. It wasn't really clear on that. It's also not very clear about whether or not like Keanu Reeves' character had a family before, or if he really had a family, if that was just a fantasy he had. It's not very clear either. But when we get done here, I might go back into Discord. I might play Inherent Vice because it's very, very much on theme. Like, those movies are very similar, and I had not considered that before watching this time. They're very similar movies. Which is a movie about got Joaquin Phoenix based on a a Thomas Pynchon novel.
Which one?
Inherent Vice.
I forgot. Yeah, he wrote. So I might be interested in that one too. I kind of like Pynchon. I like some of his stuff.
It's kind of it has
Talk
some,
about
like,
a writer for conspiracy theories.
yeah, I mean it's got some really fast. It's kind of patchy in places too. I don't know if it fully like comes together all the way at the end, but it's got some really like does some great. It's got Josh Brolin's really in it. He's got a guy that gives a great performance. I can't remember the name of the actresses in it, but they both give really good performances too. Martin Short's in it in a one really weird
Oh, I like him.
weird sequence in the middle, playing this really weird, crazy dentist. There's a lot of good stuff in it. I've seen it a couple of times. I saw it in theaters, and I saw it a couple more times on video, and like it's kind of part of my my theory, my conspiracy theory about the Golden Suicides thing, because the director Paul Thomas Anderson made after the thing with the Golden Suicides happened, he made that movie. And he made The Master, which was very clearly about Scientology, and then he made Inherent Vice, which is very similar to what Scientology was supposedly doing.
Did you read the book?
I did not read the book Inherent Vice. No, I only Thomas Pynchon novel I mostly read was Gravity's Rainbow, and I couldn't. It lost me.
Yeah, I'm curious how it translates to a screen.
That's not true. I read Crying of Lot 49, and
that's the one I read the most. I've read it,
and I like Crying of Lot 49 a lot. I almost forgot that I read that one.
I tried to reread it the other day.
But it's not very long either. It's not nearly as long as his other books.
That was his first one. Well, no, he did some.
What's that?
He did like a short story or something like that before.
Yeah, I'll find it. Sit down. Yeah, I really liked. I liked Gravity's Rainbow, but I got to the point where like other things in life happened. And then like I couldn't remember when I went to go back to try to start reading it again. I couldn't remember where I was, and I got really confused. It's a very confusing book in the first place. So it's a book I just knew I just have to start it over in order to understand what was happening again. And I just kind of like I walked away from it. But it was a really interesting book for sure. Hold on, I'm just looking for something, Lindsay. Which maybe you want?
I wanted the dark chocolate.
Well, I would be up for that if you want to. I'll try it at least. I don't know how long it'll last.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up, and I'll just go start that over there.
Okay, we could do that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's our stream for tonight. We're going to go watch Inherent Vice, based on the Thomas Pynchon novel that I have not read yet. And we'll be in the Discord, so if you're interested, just contact me, and I'll give you the link.
Yep.
Other than that, we'll see you next week. Oh, Paul is streaming tomorrow morning, PFU. He'll be on at 10:30 on his channel. And Chris and I will stream probably shortly after that at our usual time, 2 p.m. Central.
Yeah, maybe he'll open it up. Maybe he'll open up a panel or something like that. Maybe I'll jump on and talk to him or something for once. I don't know.
Yeah, I never know what he's doing until the day of. Then he usually puts his guest up or his topic. So who knows? Maybe he will.
All right. Well, we'll see.
I hope he does. I think he does good panels. I like that format.
Me too.
Okay. Well, we'll see you all next week tomorrow.
See you in the Discord or tomorrow. Bye.
All right. Let me play this out. Okay. I will see you in the Discord. That's where I'm headed. Is the music even playing? Yeah.